now I'm giving the floor to Mr. David Inaneishvili. He returned to Georgia not long ago. He is one of the most honorable information security specialists in Georgia. Today he's working with the company UGT and works on this issue. I welcome you, David Inaneishvili. The slides are in English, but the presentation will be delivered in Georgian. My predecessors have spoken so much about the security that course has been already completed and the awareness was raised, but I'll try to make such presentations that will be interesting both for beginning organizations as well as the National Bank of Georgia.
So one or two slides about our company and other slides are dedicated to the activities. I am David Inaneishvili. I work at UGT. I am head of this information security and I work on the services that develop information security. I am a citizen of Georgia and Finland as well because I worked in Finland and in the Czech Republic, and so my responsibilities was from Kansas to Singapore, and I was responsible for the security, in charge of security, and I've returned to Georgia for the third time, as Mr. Irakli has said. When I'm there in Finland, I'm missing Georgia. When I'm here in Georgia, I'm missing Finland. So. Our company was presented by Georgi Marisuradze. We are about 300 personnel. There are 7 companies, and one of the companies is UGT IT Solutions that focuses its activities on the information security. We have been in business for 18 years, and we are cooperating with the leading vendors. There are 60 engineers and consultants, and we were the best integrators last year, the year before, and I hope this year as well. I won't talk about our great experience, and I'd like to mention two different. We have been accredited. We have the right to conduct the audit on information security, and we are introducing information security in one of the agencies. And thank you very much for this law on information security. And the Georgian Railway Company will join those companies where we have the right to conduct audit. We have this 4D approach. So we will detect, provide security. We'll help you to introduce and implement. When you introduce any kind of standards standards, laws, and strategies, laws, and I won't talk about them. When you introduce security, or when you talk about the data, personal data, so we talk about the privacy, design security. It means that all these concepts should have strict definitions, and everybody should be aware of these concepts. For example, when you decide to build a house, you need an architect who will design. You need construction workers. You need an elevator, and so on. It's the same principle when you introduce security. Yes, we understand, we are aware that we need security, but how much should I spend on that? Who should be responsible? What will be the benefits, how often should we meet a week, for example, and then you'll shift to the governance as it is, and then you, after that, you inspect compliance, whether this system is compliant to the law or not. So there is a governance, security, information risk management, then security management, technology security. These are the main topics, and these are the main parts of the security system. And the last one is compliance. Compliance, whether it corresponds to the requirements. Who sets the tone? Who sets the standards? Who introduces the standards and develops them? These are the players in the market, basically, if we can call them players. For example, 10 years ago, there was established European Security Agency that coordinates these standards in Europe and coordinates the best practices and issues recommendations with regard to different topics. So it's the European Data Exchange Agency. The Data Exchange Agency of Georgia, of course, it's also the main player, because we're translating these standards into Georgia, we're adapting them to the Georgian reality. 80 Governance Institute, it's the institute established by Sakat. Have you heard of COVID? Have you heard? Yes. ISO, I think, ISO, it's ISO, Institute of International Organization for Standardization, and this institute gathers these best practices from all over the world, from the British Institute, and it was developed by the British, and then they became European and standards for these parts of the world. But Australians, new people from New Zealand, they also developed risk standards, and it's ISO 31000. But generally, they are developed by the English, and they became world standards later. NIST, it's popular in the US and that part of the world, and NIAP, it's National Information Assurance Partnership. It's the joint national agency of NIST and this one. It's the joint program that establishes standards and requirements on technological products, with regard to technological products, and we'll talk about it later. And Association of European Standards. If you work for the telecom, you know that what ETSI means. And cloud is very popular now. They don't have many standards, but Cloud Security Alliance also tries to attract many players to the cloud sphere. It's a virtual cloud. I'm not going to define the cloud, and it's a Cloud Security Alliance, also one of the best players in the market. So we have begun introducing security. Of course, what should we do? We'll have to go to our competitor and ask them what they do, or we need methodology. So we have to plan governance, first of all. What's the management and difference between, what's the difference between governance and management? But so when we have chief executives, they should have a plan. What should we do? How much should we invest? So we have two standards. ITC, it's the first standard that has been before, and information security standard, ISO 27. So we have the COBIT, the last one. COBIT, there is a de facto governance framework there that has the specialization. It's called COBIT for information security. If you are introducing COBIT, maybe it will be more relevant for your organizations. We are limited in time, so I won't talk about these different standards in detail, but if you're interested, then you can approach me during the break. So we enter the organization. We are in the organization. David and other talked about security a lot. So this is the model. It's a business model for information security proposed by ISACA. So every topic can be divided into these parts. It's a pyramid. It's the 3G photo. It depends on the human resources, on security, and you have to know what are the general goals of the organization. These are the components, and when you are establishing information security, you are there. If you are and for the information security, you have to maintain the whole balance in this triangle. You have to take into account the human factor, the culture. If you introduce the English windows, for example, and nobody knows English in the agency, it means that you won't have this return of investments at all. And you have to take into account the whole concept when you are introducing security. So please take into account this model, this triangle, this 3G photo. What's the architecture of security? If you know what IT architecture is, you know that there are two standards, Zachman framework and TOGAF. SAPSA is a comparatively new one. It means Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture. Many build their IT security or the organization without an architect. Sometimes I have a feeling that we don't have an architect in Tbilisi at all. But so excuse me for this deviation, but I got stuck in the traffic jam today, that's why. And if you'd like to view it from the architectural point of view, so we do have SEPSA and we have enthusiasts there. It's a de facto standards for the security architecture. So you have to understand the concept of security, how to divide the security, what's the logical concept, what components it consists of, and what do you need for your everyday activities. These are the consistent architectural approach to that, and if organizations develop architecture and if they need architects, then the security architects will the demand for security architects will increase as well. So I'm talking very fast because. So what's business continuity? It's another topic, but business continuity is the first and foremost one for the organization. It's the main part of the security. Business continuity means high risks that might harm the organizations or might, due to them, the organization might cease its activities. What happens? So the first is incident. So emergency, it's crisis, it's a bigger incident. After the crisis, so we might need disaster recovery and everything. These process is called business continuity. That is introduced and established before an incident happens. 27,031. So means so what is our role and where are we in this business continuity? So standard was 25999 and it became the ISO standards. Then we need risk management. What challenges do we have and what threatens my business, and we'll have to calculate and know the operational risks and information and risks to the information security is part of the general risks. There are standards 1005 and there is a management. This standard is very popular in Great Britain, for example. I would advise you to read it as well. And you have to identify risks, to assess risks, and then you should resolve, and you should know what to do. If a dark avenue, if I walk down the dark avenue, I know that risks are higher, but I'll have to decide whether to walk down the street, or I have to call the patrolling police to secure myself, or I should decide, or not, or should I decide not to walk down the street? So it's the management of risk. It's a very simple way of simple example how to manage your risks. 27,001 is either ISO certificates. Mr. David talked about them. If you 27,001 was published last year. If you don't know how to introduce them, then there are 27,002. And if you don't know how to introduce 27,002, then call us, please, and we'll advise you what to do. And so we have the Management Academy, or you might ask us and come to our UGT company, and we'll talk about it in general. These are all the standards, these are all the security standards, and the years are indicated where they were published, and many standards are being developed now. And some of them are highlighted, and begin please reading them from those highlighted standards. And if you work in energy sphere or healthcare sphere, you will have some additional standards. Standards sell very well. One piece costs 100 euro or Swiss francs, because they are sold by Swiss organizations. Begin with 1, 2, and 5. Number 1, 2, and 5. Certification. Yes. Let's assume that we have introduced this information security system, but I should have this management system, yeah, and I should know whether they are in compliance or not. And when National Bank receives this certificate, we will be the first in Georgia who will receive them. So historical, there were 9,001 to 14,001, and then ISO occupational safety certificate, the same as we used to have here in the Soviet Union, so occupational safety. In every European organization, they have these certificates, the environmental protection, occupational safety, and in management systems. If you want to introduce the security management system, you'll have to get this relevant certificate, and the management should understand what you are talking about, and you are introducing an additional management system for information system. Okay, let's assume that the management system has been also introduced in the organization. You have the policy, physical security is maintained, you control the doors, you control access, you control the exits, and so on. And we have requirements, and I meet the requirements. But then I buy products. I buy products from I buy a firewall or router, for example. Yes, it's called a firewall, but is it a firewall really? I don't know. They sell it as a firewall, but somebody sells it as a firewall. So that's why we have some special labs, ISO 50408, and this. And that determines the functional requirements to those. When you have a device has already been tested, and this common criteria is for testing. So it means that when you buy a firewall or so I need hardware or software as well. So the software has the names real 4 plus 1. It's an assurance level. Figure 1 means that it's a firewall. I can read it in the accompanying document, but I can open the box and see that it's really as a firewall. Then I can dismantle it in my lab and check it and prove that it works as it should. But when we talk about crime criteria, I should mention that, but the list of requirements is on the internet, and they should regulate themselves. Different agencies might decide that they need something for the defense sphere and don't need this one. As National Information Insurance Partnership, they create testing profiles that contain the security components. If it's a router or it's a switch, they should have internal protection against DDoS attacks. So these are the requirements that these devices should meet. And if you decide to buy some devices for the information security system and for building this information security system, pay attention if it's is a protection profile compliant, if it is compliant, if it is a standard or not, if it has been tested or not. If it has been tested in the American laboratories, and if they meet these international requirements. And we need the software, programs, software applications, and these applications are a very complicated field. The first application security, the first part of application security was published 3 years ago, but now they are perfecting it. If we work on application, on software, with regard to website, they should know OWASP, O-W-A-S-P. You should know what it is. So SQL injections are published annually. They have their own top 10 priorities, and any type of penetration testing, if specialist, this testing specialist should know what this top 10 threat of OWASP is and how your application are protected against this top 10 threats. But code should be inspected, and these standards also teach you how to develop applications and how this development life cycle should be known by the specialists in programming. And 2 slides are remaining. If you know what this box is, if you have ever seen it, so this slide is for you. If not, then ignore it. So all of you have this Windows, iPads, iPhones, but what should we do with transport systems, with hydroelectric power systems? There are some security, information security systems. It's called the industrial control systems everywhere in railway. So in these industrial control systems, there are SCADA systems. And there are distributed control systems and PLC programs and logic controls. These are 3 directions in industry, and they have their own standards. If you work in this in that sphere, so please my condolences. And if not, these are the standards for information. It's a technical report on information security published last year. And the last slide is compliance. Compliance is one of the driving force of security in general. So I need effective management, risks, and compliance is the 3rd part. So if you don't comply, you'll be criminally liable. So that's why it's Sarbanes-Oxley It was published in 2002. It was a requirement of compliance that was introduced in the United States in 2002. And the financial, so there are requirements on financial reporting, and it has the fourth section when they manage so weaknesses and so on. If you sell your shares at the American stock market, you'll have to take this into account. And there are Japanese stocks as well, BCI, DSS. If you work with credit, debit cards, and a bank with plastic cards, they have the new version 3.0, and it became mandatory this year. HIPAA, I think. It's a Health Insurance Portability Act was passed in the United States, and these are the protection of the insurance information in the healthcare sphere. And if you work in the pharmaceutical industry, so I also worked for 6 months in the security topics in the pharmaceutical industry. There are very strict requirements how the medicines should be produced and manufactured. There are GLP, GSP, so you have the whole system of validation in the pharmaceutical sphere. So these. So this sphere is less regulated in Georgia, but banks are more regulated. But we have a law on regulations that covers 39 organizations and audit. And so I'll have to check the status. 27,007. It was published in 2011. How I should check this information security system? COVID also has just published this COVID-5 for insurance. And how should we ensure the operation of COVID? How should we check its operation? Thank you very much.